Hey guys, it's Kevin for Mad Men Season 7, Episode 11, Time in Life, and that is one episode of Mad Men needs to be, guys. Seriously, I have been talking about how we have been missing something from this season, and that is what we have been missing, because this was by far the best episode of the season. Oh my god, such an intense episode, honestly. And I like this episode wasn't just, let's focus on this character, and this character. No, this episode had a legitimate, very game-changing storyline, and honestly makes me very interested in what's going to happen the rest of the season, because the cliffhanger this episode leaves on, I don't really know how it's going to go, and there's been something that happens in this episode that I've been wanting to happen for a very long time, and I absolutely love that. And let's get into this episode because it was amazing. It pretty much starts off like a regular episode. We see Pete and Ken out to dinner waiting on Dawn, and Ken is excited about the wine, and Pete says he was talking about Ziploc, and they might be in them running, and Ken says he's still deciding, and Pete reminds him how successful they've been for them in the past, and Ken critiques some work, and Pete offers to reduce some, and Dawn shows up late and apologizes and gets sarcastic about Ken's criticism, and Dawn basically says that he picked the right strategy and tells him not to have second thoughts, and Ken says okay, and Pete is shocked, which I thought was kind of interesting that we saw that. So you know, Pete's actually shocked that Ken did a good thing, that Dawn was happy about it. So the service says that Diana called twice and then sees a note saying she wasn't supposed to leave a message, and he asks if she left a number, and he says he'll pick up his own calls tonight, and Roger yells for Caroline. He says together who's responsible for paying their lease. She says it's Dawn Chambers, and then he screams for Joan too, and she comes in, tells him not to yell, and says she'll take care of this, and takes the lease letter, and Pete takes a call from Trudy. And Trudy is freaking out. I actually really like Pete's plot in this episode. A lot of times, you know, we don't really like Pete's character, but I really like what they did with Pete in this episode, honestly. Pete in this episode, he wasn't a dick, honestly. Most people think that Pete's this dick, but I think he really has evolved over the course of the show, and this episode definitely showed how much Pete has evolved, and basically, he asks what he did, and he says that it's Tammy, and he says that she was waitlisted and didn't get in at all. So she didn't get in, and Pete's freaking out. So this whole family went there, and it's understandable why he's so upset about it. I mean, she says they know they're divorced and asks him to come to the meeting with the headmaster, and he agrees and hangs up. And I like that even though he is divorced with Trudy, he's not going to not say no, because this is his daughter. He cares about her more than anything, and I thought that was really good. So Joan brings in Caroline, Shirley, and Dawn, and Roger says they're all fired, but Joan says someone at Mccann gave notice on their lease, and when he said they're all fired, I'm like, holy shit, you're gonna fire all of them? And I was surprised it actually happened. Basically, Joan tells the woman not to talk about this or start any rumors, and basically dismisses them, and Roger says to get Ferg on the line, and I'm just like, okay, why is Joan not doing what Roger wants her to do? Because it seems like Joan always follows Roger's orders, but Joan actually doesn't do that, which I thought was interesting. Peggy, meanwhile, is trying to conduct a focus group of kids to test products, and the kids are acting kind of weird, and Peggy suggests taking away several of the toys so the kids will have to deal with Scar City. And by the way, Peggy and Stan, everyone's shipping them. I am also shipping them. I really want Peggy and Stan together. I've talked about how much I want Peggy to get a love interest and get a steady boyfriend, and Stan's perfect for that. Their chemistry in this episode is just undeniable, and they better get together by the end of the show. Seriously, they are just great. So Stan goes to play with the kids and encourages one of them to throw a toy, and he talks about why they're not you know, why they're acting weird. They're not acting weird, it's just that these are normal kids. They're not actors, and I like that Stan says this, because, yeah, kids are shy when they're little, and Stan touches upon this really well. So basically he goes to play with them, and basically just tries to bond with them the best he can. So Burke takes a call from Roger about the lease, and Ferg says the lease is not a mistake, and he says he needs to talk to Jim, and Joan listens in, and Ferg says they're going to move their office into their building at the end of the month, and he says they have plenty of space. So at this point, it seems like they're just going to move offices, and Ferg says that they're bringing them home, but Roger's angry, and he asks if they're dissolving them, and Ferg says he'll call a meeting for tomorrow, and Roger asks who's playing us all on, but Ferg insists it will be great, and Roger hangs up on him. Now, let me explain something to you guys. This is something that I've been wanting to happen all along, and I predicted this. I predicted that Sterling Cooper was going to go out of business, and you know what? They pretty much have just gone out of business. Seriously, that pretty much confirms that Sterling Cooper went out of business, and I was like, oh my god, my prediction actually came true, and I thought that was amazing that we saw that. And I think that it just made the show 10 times better here, because this episode gets extremely intense after this scene. So basically, Joan lays her hand on his shoulder. Roger has no idea what to do. I mean, what do you do with somebody like that? You get a call like that. What do you do in that situation? So he's asking what he should do, and he goes to see Dawn and tells him that they pulled one over on him, which I think was the right thing to do, talk to Dawn about it. And Joan brings in Pete and Ted and says he has to tell them all, and Roger does. And Dawn says that can't be all it is, and says that they're being swallowed. Basically, they just think that they're moving. That's what they think. Pete thinks that they're moving offices, but Dawn says that that's not all it is. They're actually being swallowed up, and Roger says this means that they won't exist anymore. And I thought that was huge when we saw it. I'm like, there's no way that they're going to go out of business in this episode. We have 3 episodes left of this season. If that were to happen, though, I think that would have been really interesting. But I knew there was no way they were going to go out of business. And basically, if they do end up doing that, like maybe next episode they go out of business, that could be really interesting. But the direction that this episode's heading, I don't really see that happening. So basically, Joan says that she'll take one, and Pete says he's not going and says he didn't agree, but Dawn says when they sold the company, they did, which is true. When they sold this company, they had to make some sacrifice, and they had to know that this was eventually going to happen. And Roger says he hates Jim Cutler, but Ted says he likes it over there, and Pete calls him a sheep, and Roger says they have a meeting with Jim Hobart, and basically, Dawn says they waited so long, and he thought that they were safe, and he never really thought that this was going to happen to them. And I like that Dawn legitimately says that he had no idea this was going to happen. So Pete watches the kid hug Peggy from the focus group and asks to talk to her. She asks if it can wait, but he says it can't, and so she goes into her office, and of course she does not know about the whole moving offices and everything. She has no idea about this. So he leans against the door and looking to feed, and you know what he's going to tell her. He doesn't want to tell her. You know that he doesn't really want to tell her this, and Pete sits and she does too, and he says he's telling her this in confidence and no one else will. He says they're being absorbed by Mccann, and she asks if she's being fired, but he says no, and they'll need her for a while, maybe forever, which, honestly, if I could see anyone that's not going to be fired, it's going to be Peggy. Peggy's the one person that I know is not ever going to be fired, and he says he wanted to give her a leg up on the rats leaving the ship, and she asks if he's going, and he says now this is where the episode gets really interesting, because you're wondering who's actually going to go to Cutler and who's going to leave altogether, who's going to stick by Roger's side, and I thought this was really interesting. So Peggy tells him he'll do great, and he tells her to get back to work, and he says it's for her ears only. She nods and goes, and Joan makes a call to Richard and says she got bad news from work, and he says they can talk about when he's there tomorrow, and he shouts for his secretary to get him on the red eye. She sniffles, glad that he's coming to comfort her, and the receptionist then tells Dawn that Melanie has 2 apartments to show him in a Mohawk meeting, but he says to cancel it all, and she takes a call on his line, and says it's Lou Avery from California, and he curses and gets off the sofa to take it, and Lou says they need to talk, and he says he told Dee not to say anything because he's moving next week, and he says he doesn't care if it's Tokyo, and Dawn is confused and that's what he's talking about, and Lou says they're making Scout's honor into a cartoon, and he says he got $15K advance, and tells Dawn his mind is made up, and he tells him sayonara, and tells Dawn to enjoy the rest of his miserable life, and then hangs up on him. So Dawn's life, honestly, is going in a terrible direction. Think of it, the direction his life has gone in the past few episodes. He's lost his wife, he's lost his house, he's lost pretty much everything, and now he's lost pretty much his job, because they're being moved. They're moving, so he's pretty much lost everything, and you gotta feel bad for the guy, definitely. I mean, hopefully there's some sort of ounce of hope that can help Dawn. The thing about Dawn, though, is that Dawn doesn't let any of this get to him. He's not letting any of this get to him. He's still trying to stay positive, and that's something I've always loved about Dawn, is how positive he tries to stay. And basically, we see after this, he calls out for Meredith and then pulls everyone to the conference room, and he tells them Lou is moving to Tokyo, which means Sterling Cooper West is actually available, and he says Mccann will lose a lot of clients because of conflicts, and I really liked his presentation. I thought this was really good. He says Sunkist and Burger Chef are just 2. Those are 2 clients that they could use, and Pete says they have 1,485 square feet out there, and Dawn says they should all go, and says Mccann couldn't fire them since they would be making them money, and they say they can take Dow, and Joan says she can take Avon because, she's working there already, and Ken says he doesn't want to go, and Dawn says they'll like Ken at Mccann, which they probably would, and they all agree to scramble and land 3 accounts in 24 hours, and Dawn says they've done it before, and Peggy meets with a headhunter, and I was just really happy there. I'm like, okay, maybe something actually good's gonna happen here. Maybe they're not gonna lose. And Peggy then meets with a headhunter about a new job, and she asks who wants him. Now, even though Peggy was told she's not going to get fired, she is still taking the opportunity to possibly get a new job, because Peggy doesn't even know she wants to possibly stick around. I mean, if Pete and all of them, if they're not there, there's no point in her sticking around. So I can see why she's trying to get a new job. And he says Mccann is the best offer, but she doesn't want to go out there. And he says he gets that, but says he's foregoing commission to help her build a career. And he says sooner or later she'll have to go through a firm like them, but not stay longer than 3 years. And he says there's plenty out there, but it's a lot more money and cash. And says if she does that in 3 or 4 years, she can quadruple her salary. And he says to think carefully about it before taking meetings, because word gets out and Mccann is vindictive. This is the kind of stuff that shows this is the final season, because now Peggy is getting a different job offer and has nothing to do with Sterling Cooper. So where do I think this is kind of heading? I feel like Peggy is going to be separated from everyone else by the end of the show. Everyone else is going to be together, but Peggy is going to be completely separated. I could definitely see it happening. I mean, just knowing that Peggy wants to take this offer, and Peggy's always been someone that's to herself a lot, so I could definitely see Peggy just going off on her own. Yeah, she has Dawn, yes, she has Pete, but if they're not with her, there's no point in, staying with them. And if she wants to get a better salary, I mean, that's all Peggy's ever wanted. She's wanted a better position. She's wanted a better pay. She can get all of that just from this job. And the question is, does Peggy really want to take it? I just find that really interesting overall, that she might actually take it. And Ken then comes to see Roger and Pete, and they tell him about Mccann swallowing them up, and basically says he won't go, and Roger says they're proposing they retain independence in the California office, and Ken asks who else will go, and he says Sunkist and Burger Chef, and Ken says he's the new guy and can't make a bold decision, and Pete says they know the accountant have Don Draper, which is why he stayed, that is why Ken stayed, and Roger says he knows they can do this, and Ken says he fantasized one day to be in this position, and he tells Pete he's no innocent bystander either, and Ken says he's toyed with them long enough, and says no, and then walks out, and Ken's gonna be stubborn, okay? Ken's not gonna listen to them. I mean, not everyone's gonna listen. So Dawn and Ted are in the conference room, and Dawn says he needs to describe California in a way that won't make them jealous, and Ted says to tell them that his ex-wife lives there. He then tells Dawn he met a great woman from an ex from college, and says she can't leave New York, and he can't leave her. And Joan comes in and says Ken says no, so they lost Dow. And Dawn, and again, this is showing why Ken doesn't want to be there. That's why. It's not that Ken doesn't trust them. It's that there's more that, Ted also really doesn't want to go with them because he doesn't want to leave this girl. And he wants to be with her. So I like that everyone's kind of just in the middle right now. There's no one that's like, all right, I'll do this, all right, or no, I won't do this. I like that people are definitely thinking about this. I think it's really well done the way they're handling that. So Dawn says they can work on pulling some smaller accounts, and Joan goes to get the files. So Pete and Trudy meet with the headmaster. Honestly, one of the highlights of the episode was this scene. I thought this was amazing, and again, really shows the development that Pete has gotten over the years. And basically, they tell him that they think it's a mistake that Tammy isn't there, and the man says Pete didn't go there and says the decision is final. The guy says their daughter scored low in the draw a man test, and he says kids have to draw a man, the detail matters. He says Tammy drew a head, mustache, and necktie, and Pete asks about the mustache, and he says Trudy was arrogant not to submit applications to other schools and calls her careless, and Pete demands he apologize. He is pissed that he actually said that about Trudy, and I can't believe that he actually did say that about Trudy. Like, when he said that, I was like, why would you say that to him? Like, why would you say that about Trudy? I was so upset that he actually said that. I was like, did you just say that right now? Like, he actually said that about Trudy, and that was insane that he actually said that to her. And it turns out that he's actually holding a 300-year-old grudge from Scotland, and Pete's just so pissed at him because it's all because of Scotland, and Pete just ended up punching him in the face, and I thought that was awesome because Pete didn't do that for himself. He did that to protect Trudy, who he's not even married to, but he does care about and doesn't want her to be insulted, and I thought that was awesome when we saw that. I love that scene. That was definitely one of the highlights of the episode, was Pete punching that guy in the face. Definitely deserved it. So Peggy and Stan tell the girl auditions are done. There's this little girl there, but she says her mom left her there because she's picking up her brother from another audition. And Harry's cursing on the phone. They walk the girl away, and Trudy brings Pete home and offers to ice his hand, and he asks why, and she only applied to one school. And she says the head of admissions was fresh with her at another school, and she says she should have stayed in the city, but he says the city is in the toilet, and she says she has no friends out there, and she says that the husbands won't leave her alone, says in 10 years everyone will leave her alone. And he says that she's ageless, and she says she's feeling sorry for herself, and he says to tell Tammy he loves her, and then he asks to use the phone before he leaves, and Pete then shows up at the office, says he got Secor laxatives to join them. Don jokes that they must have been difficult to move, and the kid actor is playing on the phone while Stan and Peggy talk casting, and she doesn't like that one had a lisp and a unibrow. But here's the thing, these are just how kids are. These are just things that kids have, and she tells him he can decide, and then says he can tell anyone, and he asks what it is. She tells him Mccann is taking, and of course she didn't tell him this, so I'm happy that Peggy did tell him. She tells him straight out that Mccann's taking over, and the girl screams when she staples her thumb. Her mom shows up, asks to see her fingers. She says they're going to the ER, and the mom says she let her child play with dangerous things, and Peggy says you can't leave a kid at an office building, which, no, you can't. I mean, it's not going to end well, obviously, if someone, if there's a little kid there, they don't know what they're doing. So it's not Peggy's fault that that happened, and the mom blows up at her. Stan asks how that turned out into that, and Peggy tells him to get back to work, and I like that they just kind of, like, dropped it because he doesn't really want to talk about it. So, Mccann and Ferg come to the meeting, surprised to see Dawn and the crew are there early, and Dawn gives this amazing presentation. That's one of the best parts of Madden, is Dawn's presentations. He gives an amazing presentation here. He says that they're there to show what they can add to Mccann, and Dawn says their agencies complement each other, but they'll lose business due to conflict, and Dawn says they'll lose 4 major clients they could service from the West Coast office, and shows a sign that says Sterling Cooper West, a division of Mccann. And Jim asks Ferg to step out, and he does, and Dawn says it's $275K in profit they'll get for no cost, and he asks Dawn to sit, and he does. And Mccann says he doesn't like the way this was handled, but says it wasn't capricious. I'm sorry, I'm trying to pronounce it, but capricious, I think it's how you pronounce it. Basically, he says they're rolling out the red carpet for them, and Dawn says they've attached to their name and clients, and Mccann says it's done. They've passed the test. He says they are getting 5 of the most coveted jobs in advertising and all the resources that go with it. And Mccann says he shouldn't have to sell them on this, and basically says they're dying and going to advertising heaven. He says they're getting Buick, Nabisco, Ortho, Pharmaceuticals, then whispers Coca-Cola, and he tells them to stop struggling and says, and right there, and I was surprised he said this, he's just like, you won. And he tells him to take the rest of the day off, pop some champagne, leaves them to sit in the conference room. They're all stunned. They have no idea. They don't know why he just said, you're done, you win and everything, because they thought they'd have more of a fight to fight, and they don't, and basically they head to the bar for drinks, and Roger says that they should toast, and Joan asks again, and they drink to their dead comrade, and Joan says she has to go, and she says she has plans, and Roger asks her to come back after, and Pete says he'll drop her off. She hugs Ted, Dawn, and Roger goes see them another round, and Ted says he has a date. Dawn says it's okay that Ted is happy about this. He says he's relieved. Roger toasts Lou Avery and says that the jabs are going to eat him alive. Joan tells Pete this is a disaster. She says Holbert listed off accounts, but everyone but her, and she says he shouldn't count anything he said. Pete says he feels like this is supposed to happen, and Joan says that's nice. He doesn't like that she's not being optimistic about it, which she's really not. I mean, Joan doesn't really seem like she thinks this is happening, and she says no one will take her seriously over there, and I can understand what she's saying. I mean, she's a woman where there aren't many women, and here she's very well respected, and they're not going to take her seriously there. And I just like seeing this more vulnerable side of Joan. You know, Joan's always the one that's sort of like stuck up, and we don't really like that. I like seeing Joan actually be in this position, and I thought that was really well done. So Peggy and Stan are still working, and she says she can't do any work. He says he appreciates the warning, but Peggy says she's thinking about that woman and her daughter, and she says that woman shouldn't have talked to her that way. He says that woman shouldn't have kids, and Peggy says she doesn't dislike kids, and Stan says Peggy shouldn't be angry that she didn't get to have kids, and she asks if his career is thanks to him not having kids, and he jokes not that he knows of, and she tells him he doesn't understand women and rants about women who make mistakes with kids, who should be able to move on like men do and not wallow it in, and Stan's confused and says she's right, and Peggy says you do what you think is the best thing. He asks what she did, and Peggy says she's there and he's with a family somewhere. She says she doesn't know, but it's not because she doesn't care. She says you're not supposed to know, you can't go on with your life, and Stan says he's sorry and didn't know. She says he doesn't know a lot of things about lots of people, and that's the point, and Stan says it's not the point, but Peggy says she's fine and has work to do, and I really do love these two together. I hope that they do get together because they honestly are great together, and I'd love to see them maybe start a relationship, definitely. I think he's good for her. So, Roger talks with Don. He says he made a deal with God if this worked out. He stops smoking. Don lights Roger's cigarette and he says no more Sterling Cooper, no more Sterlings. Of course, he doesn't know about Kevin, of course, his actual son when he had that whole affair with Joan. Don and Roger talk by each other, and so I'm wondering if maybe Roger is eventually going to find out about Kevin. I mean, that's something that I feel like Joan needs to tell him eventually at some point, but she hasn't, so... Roger says he envied that Don was always reaching, and Don says he envied that Roger didn't have to, and he says in another lifetime he'd be Roger's chauffeur, and Roger jokes that he'd be screwing his grandmother, and Roger says he has to... Now, of course, Roger had sex with Megan's mother, so I could definitely see it happening. So Roger says he has to go and says he's got a girlfriend, says Marie Calvette, and he says they didn't tell anyone. And I'm happy that he told Don that he was with Marie. And they both discuss marrying their secretaries, and Roger kisses Don on the cheek and leaves after Don wishes him well. And Don doesn't seem to care, and I can understand why Don doesn't care. There's other things on his mind right now. He doesn't really care that, because he doesn't know, of course, that Marie is the one that got him out of the apartment. He doesn't know about that yet. So when he finds out, Don's gonna be really pissed at Roger, and it's gonna be like, okay, you have to leave Marie. You have to do what you can, because I don't think Roger knows about that, and he's gonna, I don't know if he's gonna be like, you have to leave Marie, but he definitely is gonna be pretty upset when he finds out that Marie is the one that made him homeless. So... he goes to Diana's place and knocks, and there's a gay couple there. And I thought it was interesting that we actually saw a gay couple here, and they tell him that Diana left her furniture and just up and went. And then the securities are then, basically, I thought that was a good scene overall. So the secretaries are then all abuzz. They're trying to figure out who is going to get to go to the new location. Because if they're not, they know that there's going to be people that aren't going to go. And I think this was really interesting that we saw that. I mean, Dawn, Shirley, and, now I can't think of her name now, Caroline, the three of them, they're discussing who's actually going to go, because they don't know who's going to go to this new location. There's going to be some people that aren't going to go, and that just made it even more interesting, because now we know that there are some people that aren't going to go to that new location. The question is who isn't going to get to go, and Meredith then comes in, she wants to know what they're talking about, and then goes to confront Dawn, and I've never seen Meredith be so angry before. We always see Meredith as, like, the dumb blonde who just talks to Dawn and has no idea what's going on. So to see her actually completely freak out about something was awesome. I love seeing Meredith freak out about this. And everything that she says to him, honestly, is completely justified. I completely understand what she's saying. And she's asking him some really reasonable questions here. Basically, she tells him that there are rumors everywhere. And she asks if they're going to Mccann, and if she's going along. He calls her sweetheart, and she says not to call her that, and says he's not going to have an apartment or an office. He says if she wants to go with him, she can, and she says it's not that simple, and she's not really sure if it's going to work out and everything, but he seems really hopeful about it. So I don't know if Meredith is actually going to do this. I don't know if Meredith really trusts Dawn right now, but I found that really interesting overall. She was freaking out about it. I just thought overall it was really interesting. So Peggy's phone rings and her secretary doesn't get it. She answers, and it's Stan, who says he's daydreaming in his office. He asks what she's going to do, and she says Mccann, and if he wants, and he asks if she should, and she says everything will be fine. He says he's so dumb he believes her. She tells him to stay on the phone while she works, and I definitely want to see these two go into a partnership, definitely. I could see that happening for them. Honestly, here's what I think the series finale is going to be. Peggy goes off on her own, away from Mccann, and works for Stan. I could definitely see it happening, and if that happens, I think it could be really well done. So, Don calls the office together. He says they're proud to announce their move over to Mccann. Then he says Roger has a word to say. And this ending scene was just probably the best ending scene in Mad Men since Waterloo. Honestly, this scene was amazing. Roger said the transition will be smooth and there's room for them. The employees all grumble loudly, and Roger said it's good news and says they didn't do this. And everyone's breaking out in chaos because they have no idea what's going to happen. They don't know if they're going to get to go. They don't know what's going to happen to them. And in the end, but everyone walks away upset. They leave the 5 corps standing there, staring at the universe. Ted, Dawn, Joan, Roger, and Pete, they're all just standing there, and basically, they don't know what they're going to do. So, basically, we don't know what's going to happen, and I love this cliffhanger, and oh my god, this is what Mad Men needs to be. Seriously, this episode was absolutely amazing, and you know why it was amazing? It was intense, it had some game-changing stuff, it's setting up the finale, which is awesome, and these last 3 episodes are going to be so satisfying. If this is what the last 3 episodes are going to be, I mean, this show is going to be an amazing final season, and I can't wait. And honestly, guys, I've been like, this hasn't really felt like a final season because of this episode. That's why. They were waiting for this episode for it to actually finally feel like a final final season. I mean, the first half of the season definitely felt like a final season. But the past 3 episodes, it just felt like regular episodes. They haven't really felt like a final season. And this felt like a final season. You know that they're leaving Sterling Cooper. You know that they're moving to Mccann. And you don't know who's going. And I like that we don't exactly know who's actually going to get to go to Mccann. Now, my question is, who is going to get to go to Mccann? Because they're all kind of not sure who's going to go. They're all kind of like, am I going to get to go? I mean, there are a lot of possibilities here. Dawn could go and Shirley couldn't. Shirley could go and Dawn couldn't. So who knows what's actually going to happen there. So there's a lot that's going on there, and I think that's really interesting overall. Let's talk about Peggy. Peggy, I feel, is not going to go to Mccann. I think she's going to take this new job offer because it's a better pay for her, and we'll see what ends up happening. Maybe Stan's going to convince her to do something. I really want to see these two get together. I think Stan is really going to help her make a decision here. We'll see what happens. Let's talk about Joan. Joan, I know, is very worried that she is not going to be as respected, and she wants to be respected. And the question is Joan going to be as respected? Is she actually going to leave with them? I mean, would Joan really leave, if she doesn't feel like she's going to get the respect she deserves? I mean, she's not going to do that. We know Joan's not going to do that. So I don't know what's going to happen there. When Dawn finds out that Roger is, with Marie, and that Marie is the one that made him homeless, now that he knows that, Roger's with Marie, how is he going to react to this? Because I know eventually Dawn's going to somehow find out. We just don't know how, but definitely he's going to find out at some point. I just don't know how right now. Is Meredith going to make amends with Dawn? Is she going to leave with him to Mccann, or is she going to abandon him altogether? I mean, what she said, and I completely understand. She's telling me that he's just being way too calm about it, and some of them, yeah, they are being way too calm because who knows what could happen to Mccann. Mccann could be a whole different situation from Sterling Cooper. Mccann, they could be doing nothing. This could all be they could be screwing them. They could be telling them, you're going to do all this stuff, but they're not going to do anything. So it's just really interesting stuff overall, and we don't really know what's going to happen, and I love not knowing what's going to happen. Seeing Pete and Trudy interact, I thought that was great. I definitely love seeing their interaction overall. I think that was very well done. I definitely really enjoyed that. Is Joan going to tell Roger about Kevin? She has to at some point. I mean, Kevin obviously is their son. She needs to tell them that it's their son because he doesn't know that, and that's something that I think definitely needs to happen before the series ends. Definitely, I could see that happening. I kind of think I have an idea now of how the show's going to end. I think some people are going to go to Mccann. Some people are going to go to other job offers. We saw that Ted's not going with them, definitely. Ken's not going with them. But it seems like Roger, Dawn, Joan, Peggy, they're kind of the ones that I think are going to do this. I mean, Pete also... Peggy, I'm still kind of on the fence about, though, because she did get that job offer, and I feel like she definitely wants to take that job offer. She shouldn't forget about it. She should not turn down that job offer for Mccann, because Mccann, I don't think, is as good as what that job can get her, and I think that job is a lot better than what she could get at Mccann, and as good as Dawn's pitch was, who knows what could happen to Mccann, and I love not knowing what's actually going to happen here, and this episode was absolutely amazing, obviously, absolutely loved this episode. This episode was by far the best episode of the season. I cannot wait for the final 3 episodes. I really was not looking forward to it. I mean, Mad Men's been a show that, yeah, I watched, I review it, but, like, if I wouldn't review it, I wouldn't have watched it, and this episode, I'm like, no, I definitely want to watch this show now. Now, I really want to watch this show, and they completely turned themselves around this episode. You guys saw my tweet. This is the kind of stuff I want to see on Mad Men, but that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys thought of this episode, and I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for tonight's episode of the original. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.